Oh, yeah, he's so dirty. Come on. Why can't they turn to dust like they do on TV shows? Anybody got any bleach?
Good versus evil, a scenario as old as time. The concept of the powers of good against the forces of evil is well rooted in all of our myths, legends, folklore, and even religious stories. A good villain doesn't see themselves as villainous. They may do villainous things, but that person believes they're doing them for righteous reasons. Likewise with heroes, no one is completely good or completely evil. But what about the paranormal world? Is there really such a thing as an evil presence or a good spirit? To answer the question, let's revisit some stories so we can compare incidents of supernatural encounters that are classed as either evil or good.
I was the type of kid that you couldn't nail down. I was running around, I was a little athlete, I was always on my bike, I was always running someplace, always doing something. Very physical little kid. I had to keep myself occupied doing something. If I wasn't climbing something, I was building something or digging a hole somewhere. Okay, with that said, where I lived on Long Island, there was a lake. A beautiful, beautiful big lake that everybody knew about, but there were lots of places that little kids knew about, that no one else knew about. What I'm saying is when we were little kids, we used to make paths in the woods. We used to ride our bikes there. We used to run in the woods where nobody could find us. I mean, this was the perfect little hideaway. It was a treasure for little kids. It was a great place to grow up. Anyway, one day, my best friend couldn't hang out with me that day because he had to watch his little sister. And remember, we're 8 years old. So I decided I had to get on my bike and I had to go to the lake. Well, in our backyard, there was a fence and there was a hole in the fence. And that hole in the fence was where I used to go in and out all the time. And on the other side of that fence, I used to keep my bike. Nobody knew about it because it was adjacent to where the park was and there was a lake back there. And that lake, it was huge. Anyway, what had happened was this day that I went to the lake, okay, I went by myself and I rode my bike there and I used to go fishing there. I would drop my fishing pole in the water. I would use a paper clip for a hook and put bologna or cheese on the hook. And I actually caught a couple of fishes that wouldn't eat them, would know what to do with them. Take them off the hook and throw them back. Anyway, one day I was feeling really adventurous. And we used to go out in the lake, we'd swim around a little bit, but we were always a little reluctant to go too far. We would never go out past 15 or 20 feet. We were little kids. Don't go out in the lake, don't go out in the lake. That's all we ever remember hearing from our parents. Anyway, this one day, of course I was by myself, literally no one was around. I went to the lake, I looked this way, I looked that way. It's like, this is great, no one's around. I go swimming. So I go out into the lake and you're wading in the water. And the water is no deeper than midway between your knees and your ankles. Now, I'm an 8-year-old kid, so, how tall is an 8-year-old kid? Barely 4 feet tall. So I went out there, splashing around, having a good time, skipping rocks. And remember, no one was around anywhere. Now, when I went out into the lake that day, I didn't have the intention of going swimming. I wasn't a great swimmer. I was a dog paddler. That's not a swimmer. Anyway, I went out into the lake that day, and I walked out, and I would say I walked out about 10 feet. The water was below my knees, so you're feeling safe. I heard a sound in the woods that sounded like a couple of animals fighting. So I turned around, I look, okay. So as I'm looking back, it was a very fluid thing. Just as I was looking back, take a step forward, there was a drop-off. It was like, went right down. And I didn't know there was a drop-off. So I slipped on the drop-off. I went all the way down, like I slid down. My little body went all the way down, and my feet were above my head. Now keep in mind, I'm in water. I'm in about 4.5, 5 feet roughly of water. Now when you're a little kid who's barely 4 feet tall, this is water that's up to your head. Well, when I was in the water, I'm gasping for air. I'm kind of fighting to get up. I couldn't get up. My feet were above my head. I'm looking at my feet and I'm gulping in water. Now you got to keep in mind, no one's around. Literally no one is around. So here it is I'm an 8-year-old kid by himself in a lake, 20 feet out, flailing in the water because I feel I'm drowning, which technically I was, gulping down water. And just as I was pulling my hand up, for whatever reason, a hand came by and pulled me right out of the water, pulled me up out of the water like I was flying out of the water. And it was this woman, this beautiful woman. She didn't say a word to me. She was probably in her 20s or 30s, blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful. She came out of literally nowhere. I remember I said I was by myself. This woman comes by, she pulls me right out of the water, and my eyes locked on her eyes. And they were so bright and beautiful. And I gave her a hug, like I never hugged anyone before. It was so tight. And I was coughing, gasping for air. She didn't say a word, and she hugged me in a way that I felt safe, I felt secure, I felt calm. It was obvious she saved my life. She saved my life. Now here's this little 8-year-old kid in the middle of seemingly nowhere, in my backyard, by the lake. No one's around. I'm drowning in the water, and this beautiful blonde woman with blue eyes, she didn't say a word. She comes out of nowhere, grabs me, pulls me out. I'm a little kid freaking out. She didn't say anything to me. Looking back now, it was the most beautiful thing. She just held my little face, and she looked me right in the eye, and she rubbed my hair from my forehead back. My mother used to do that to me. She did it 3 times to me while she was looking at me. And she held my little face and she said, "Your mother's waiting for you." And I just stopped what I was doing. It was like a frozen moment. We didn't say anything, and I just took off running the other way towards my house. I left my bicycle there. I forgot why I even went there. I ran so fast, thinking that, how does this woman know my mother's waiting for me? I must be in some kind of trouble or something. It's like, my mother's waiting for me? How could she possibly know? So I'm running. I am just heading, all I'm thinking of is my mother's waiting for me. I get home, I go through that little opening in the fence. I'm running through the backyard. I open up the back door. My mother sees me, and she has my favorite lunch waiting for me. Tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich waiting at the table. Because my brothers were at summer recreation and I was home that day. So it was just me and my mom. She didn't say anything. She's like, "Hey, just in time for lunch." I didn't know what to say. I looked and she's like, "Wash your hands, come on and eat." I go to wash my hands. I didn't say much. I just looked at her and she's just like, gave me that look, and she did the same thing to me that the woman did who saved me. She held my face, she kissed my cheek, and she rubbed my hair 3 times. I just kept it to myself. I never said a single word to anybody ever. And I've had that image locked away for so long. And when I look back at that, at the way she held my face, and that woman just moments before that, I mean, what happened? What happened to me? What happened to that little kid? Some stranger saved my life and sent me back to my mother. I mean, well, what was that? Was that divine intervention?
Who can say what it was that he experienced all those years ago? Perhaps it was just a helpful passerby who saw a young child in need of rescuing. Or maybe it really was a guardian angel, watching over young Russell as he ventured out into the dangerous waters. History tells us that witches can be both good and evil. So I had a chat with one to get a better understanding of their lifestyle.
All my life I've been surrounded by people who can call themselves witches or pagans, and I grew up on the Isle of Anglesey. So I was surrounded by mythology, magic, things like that, and my grandmother actually called herself a witch, but I always kind of assumed that was all just a game or a make-believe. Didn't think much of it until I was about 12, and I started reading into it, started studying into it, so technically I've been a witch since I was about 12, 13.
Has the actual practice of being a witch changed much? I mean, you watch a lot of documentaries and read a lot of books, and you see, like, they're all in pointy hats, cursing cows when to go sour. Has a lot of the practicing changed? I mean, do you still do things like have a witch's familiar or anything like that?
So a lot of the tropes that we have from the 1600s about witches, some of them have some kind of basis in reality. So witches' familiars, in the past they were considered to be demons or goblins that took the form of an animal, whereas these days most witches have a pet that they use as a familiar. A familiar and a pet are very different things. A familiar will actively work with you and engage with you when you're practicing magic or when you're doing your rituals, whereas a pet usually won't.
And how about when you're first becoming a witch? I imagine hundreds of years ago you probably got to be part of a coven and they teach you the ways, or you've got to be passed down a book of instructions. Nowadays you can just go on a website and print it off or order a book. Was that easier? Because you say you became a witch at a very young age, but you started practicing witchcraft probably later on. How did you come into it? Was it a website? Did you find a book? Did you have a friend that introduced you?
So I started out by I found a book in a charity shop.
Yeah.
It was called Spells for Teenage Witches, which, looking back at it, I cringe a little, but I still have the book. It's just a little yellow book, and back then I thought nothing of it. I thought, it must be something to do with Harry Potter, it must be fiction, let me have a leaf through it, see what it's about. And looking back at it now, I can see that it actually is a guide for pagan witches. It's a guide on how to cast your own spells, on how to draw your own circle, how to draw down the moon, how to work with the energies of nature. But back then I was completely fascinated by it. And of course, because I grew up in the age of the internet coming into being, and there was all sorts of websites about spells for witches and how to do these things, and of course YouTube videos and such as well. So it was so easy for me to just kind of get online, start getting the information, and it's just getting easier and easier as time goes on.
For most of us, the worst thing we have to endure during a holiday in the UK is bad weather. But for Ross and his friend, when they were staying close to a marina in Cornwall, and the two decided to experiment with a homemade spirit board, getting wet was the last thing on their mind.
As far back as I can remember, I have always had a belief in the paranormal. I've always believed in God. I've always maintained the thought that there is more to this life than the one we live now, and there is far more out there than we can properly, truly ever understand while still on this earth. I've always had a massive interest in anything classified as paranormal, be it UFOs, ghosts, demons, mythical creatures. There have been a couple of occurrences in my life that have helped mould this belief in me, little things I've seen, heard, but none more convincing to me than what occurred one holiday when I was 14 with a friend when we were staying in Cornwall. The place we were staying was on Milo Harbour, which is in Truro, a little place just by the sea, still very strong fishing community going on there. House about 100 years old or so, conveniently fairly close to the graveyard. Why wouldn't it be? And it's a holiday home that my family and I have been to numerous times since I was about 5. It belongs to my mother's friend, and I've always had a weird, creepy feeling about it. There's always been a feeling of unease that I could never quite explain, even way back when I was about 5. But I never saw anything really, so I just dismissed there being anything there. But on this one occurrence, when my friend came with me this time, for some unknown reason, we thought it would be a fun idea to create our own Ouija board. And when I say create, I mean we literally just had a piece of paper, cut out all of the letters. We got a glass, simple glass tumbler, and a candle. That was it. That was literally all we used. We set up our little board. Again, I don't know what we were hoping to achieve with this, or who we were hoping to contact. I don't know why we thought this was a good idea. But so we went ahead, we got out all our little letters, laid them out on the table. We put our candle, lit our candle, put the glass over it, and my friend and I put our hand on it, the glass, and we pretty much went around. He went inviting anyone who was out there to come forth into this little dingy, I guess, little laundry type room that we were sitting in. It was quite unused. It was really just sort of the boiler room / maintenance room. And so we started the process, and didn't take too long for something to start happening. Must have been only about 2 or 3 minutes into it, suddenly the glass moved. And when I say moved, I mean my hand was on top of his, so obviously I looked at him straight away when it did move, and the tears and fear I saw in his eyes pretty much confirmed to me that it was not him. And the force that this glass was moving was incredibly strong, and at no point did I feel that it would be okay to break this cycle. It was like a magnet. There was no way. I thought something terrible would happen if I was to pull away. It didn't seem feasible. But sure enough, this glass started moving, and I was a scribe, so I had one hand free to write down the letters. My friend started asking questions, like, who are you? When did you die? But all we got was nonsense. Pure and utter nonsense. It was either playing with us, illiterate, or I don't know what, but it just went to random letters across the page. My scribing down, which I wish I kept, though wouldn't have made much sense, was literally just a jumble of letters. It would not answer a question coherently at all. This must have gone on for a good 10-15 minutes. Felt like longer, but probably wasn't. And again, at no point did we feel we could just pull away from it. Now eventually, after it was obvious we were going to get nowhere in answering any of our questions, my friend invited it to go away. He said, are you going to go away now? And this is the one point where it became coherent. Here is where it decided it could spell, and decided to repeatedly spell out the word no. It went N, it went O, back to the centre. It went N, it went O, back to the centre. N-O, centre, N-O, centre, N-O, centre. It was making its point very clear. It was not going to go. We ended the summoning shortly after, feeling that we were pretty much done with that. That was the thing we did. That was interesting. But we thought whoever it was, had decided to go after all. Because there was nothing else happening in that house. We didn't feel anything around us, no more energy. The sort of clammy cold feeling that we did have was no longer there. So we thought it had gone. But later that night, we found it had not gone. My parents were downstairs watching TV when my dad suddenly saw a shadow of a man move directly past the curtains. Now this could very easily be dismissed as just flicker of the light, anything like that. Very easy to dismiss that, I know that. But he is convinced that he saw a fully fledged body walking past the curtains. And sure enough, our dog at the time, Shadow, was absolutely freaked out. He did not like it for a second. He went absolutely insane. Later that night, when my parents were going to bed, at some point in the night, the dog again went absolutely mad. He did not want to be in their room. He was staying in their bedroom. He went insane, and he just would not stay in that room. He was so freaked out. He insisted on being let out, and he tore out of the house and would not come back in. But then the strangest thing happened, which makes everything else feel incredibly minor. So my friend went into the bathroom and he came out again looking like he'd seen a ghost again. And he said, go look at the window. I said, what? He said, go look at the window. Okay. So I went into the bathroom, looked at the window, and on there was, now this was double glazing, and on the inner part of the panel, so where you cannot access from either side, and bear in mind this is also on the top floor, in the inner panel was a etching of a pentagram, and that was definitely never there before. There is no way to have drawn it on from the outside. There is no way to draw it from the inside. There is no explanation as to how that got in there, inside this glass. Weirdly enough, the next day it had gone, so it wasn't even there, which we cannot again explain. So this was scratching in the glass. You know, this wasn't like someone had just breathed steam on it and had drawn it on with a finger. This was scratched inside there, and it had then disappeared. What that means, where it had gone, I do not know. Is that good? Is that evil? I genuinely don't know.
Nature doesn't work in good versus evil. Nothing is black and white, and we focus very much on a divinity and a love for nature. And so if nature doesn't work in very specific black and white, good, bad, then neither should witches, we don't believe, because we work with the intrinsic forces of the natural world. Sometimes I might do a spell that is a blessing, but you know, it depends on the context. For example, if I'm blessing you to avoid negative people, to you that's a good thing, but to the negative people that might be considered bad. And there's a quote that I live by, and that is, a witch who can't curse can't heal.
You know, whether it's cursing or healing or good or evil, opposites make a whole, and it's safe to say that without one half, the other half couldn't exist. So like Mara said, nature doesn't work in such ways, so maybe when it comes to the paranormal world, it's not quite so black and white.